Boom, and with life. Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Man with Purpose. Today, I'm very honored and proud to be joined by Ben Goresky. Ben is an addiction counselor, a men's coach, and an explorer of consciousness. He's the founder of Evolving Men, a site that is dedicated to creating inspiring content for men who want to expand their consciousness, evolve into relationships and masculinity. He's also part of the growing community called Samurai Brotherhood, which again is really focused on popularizing men's work. Ben, thank you very much for doing this, sir.
Pav, it's great to be here, man. It's really great to be with you.
I normally invite all of my guests to perhaps close their eyes and just take a deep breath and just do a quick check and see what's present for us. Anything that's particularly resonating with you right now?
Yeah, what's resonating for me is just gratitude for the fact that this line of work that I've stumbled into over the last few years, it sort of wraps around the world, and that I'm connecting to a guy who's 12 hours away from me, opposite side of the world, and we're doing the same work and learning to connect to our deeper masculine selves. And we're doing it with other men. And I'm just grateful that you're doing the work, that I'm doing the work, and that this stuff exists, because it's brought so much more life into my life, if you know what I mean. So much more like vitality and energy and connection, right? Yeah. And so I'm just grateful.
Yeah, I'm checking in with gratitude as well. It's an honor, it's a privilege, to be speaking to men like yourself that I'm, following and I'm looking up to, and I really admire the fact that you're fiercely going after this and popularizing this men's work. But also to have the ability to kind of contribute in my own, modest and special way. So I'm checking in with gratitude. So I'm actually curious about your story. I did a little bit of research, but I didn't want to dive too much in because I want to kind of remain curious and kind of explore this throughout the call. Maybe talk to me a little bit about what Ben was like before finding men's work. What was your life looking like, and how did you even stumble upon this?
Yeah. So I have sort of two turning points where I connected with groups of men. And the first is when I ended up in rehab when I was 16 years old. And there was various groups that met in the rehab center on a weekly basis. They had a weekly schedule that involved something like 30 groups per week. So it's a lot of therapy. But the one group that had the most impact on me was guys rap, they called it. And the guys would sit in a circle and we would talk about anything, secrets, our deepest, darkest, whatever. And we'd also talk about our dads, and whenever dads came up and we started, bouncing around, talking about our dads, the tears were flying. And it was really powerful, therapeutic process with the men. So I got out of rehab. I went to 12-step programs, and I was always gravitating towards the men's groups, because the men's groups there was a different level of honesty when men are alone. And so basically when I was about 30, I had been going to AA for 15 years. I stopped going to AA because I started feeding my soul with lots of other things. And so the men's group thing sort of drifted away. I stopped having this sort of regular connection with men. And I started dating this gal who had a transpersonal counselor that she was seeing. And I met him and he said, "Hey, I've got a men's group. We've got one group of guys that meets every week, and you should come to one of our open houses. Check it out. I think you'd probably be a good addition to the group." So I went. And I was like, "Oh, this is good," and a little bit intimidating. These guys are it's not just a sharing circle. There's direct contact and direct like feedback happening around the circle. And it was kind of like, oh, wow, this is intense. Like it was when I was in rehab 20 years ago or 15 years ago at the time. And I didn't join for like 6 months. I wasn't ready. What I knew internally, and I said this to my partner at the time, I was like, once I join, I'm pretty sure I'm going to be like super into it. So I don't know that I'm ready right now. So I like delayed, I procrastinated a little bit. But finally I joined, and I had this reconnection with groups of men that I'd been longing for a long time. It was like, by that point, it was like a real sort of gap in my life. I was really looking for brotherhood. I had a lot of healing to do with brother stuff, like with actual brother in my life. And this became the doorway to like really bringing that healing around full circle.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, there's so many questions I wanna dig into. Do you mind me asking how did you get up? How did you get into a rehab? Was there's probably some kind of an addiction there?
Yep. Yeah. I mean, the short version of the story is that my older brother and he was 3 years older than me, very like emotionally expressive guy. And him and I, we grew up with good parents, but our parents didn't have the emotional language to nurture emotions and to give them space. And they instead sort of just tried to like turn away from them or fix them. And so my brother and I, being pretty emotional guys and like very expressive, ended up bumping into all of the structures of the world and getting into trouble in school, and then being medicated because of that. So we were both on amphetamines. They're trying to like calm us down, and we're seeing doctors, and my brother's being kicked out of schools and put in special schools, and then eventually he's getting thrown in jail for committing crimes because he's freaking out and hurting people, and then when he finds drugs, that's a great solution for him, really primarily just like cannabis and alcohol. And the same thing happened to me. So essentially, long story short, my brother and I both ended up in rehab I was 16 and he was 18, 19. So my parents were great, and my dad was a doctor, so they could afford to pay for us to be in rehab. And that actually for me was a big turning point in my life. For my brother, he had a lot more sorting stuff out to do. But yeah, essentially when I ended up in rehab, I was in a lot of pain. I was really confused about who I was in the world. And like, you're already that way when you're a teenager. But for me, it was like, I was on a path to self-destruction for sure. And I was going to end up in a really bad place. And so they basically just like, I went there for an assessment, and then they were like, you're staying. And
Wow.
they can do that there. They just like, your parents sign you in and you're just like in. So I was there for a year and slowly did my work to bring my walls down essentially and surrender to the reality of my life and how lost I was. And essentially had like a spiritual experience breakdown, and then rebuilt myself from the ground up and figured out how to live without, when people ask me what I'm addicted to, what I was addicted to, I said escape. I was addicted to escape because I just wanted to escape my body, my mind, my emotions, and get away, and I needed to learn to like live life on life's terms.
Wow.
Yeah.
It, do you kind of see this as a kind of recurring pattern with some of the men that maybe are visiting your men's circles or men's groups right now, that they're also looking to run away from something or escape from something? Is that a pattern? Or
Yeah, I would say it is. But a lot of times I think guys enter men's work with having made the resolution or the statement that they want to stop running, because they know that coming to a men's group, that they're going to be confronted with those things, and that's precisely why they come a lot of the times. I find some guys kind of wander in, but at least in my community, guys like when we make it evident that like, hey, we're here doing deep work together. We're trying to wake up, become conscious men, become good men, stop running from our problems, face our shadows, and, be accountable for our lives. A lot of guys know deep down where they're not doing that. And so it's intimidating to join a group, but there's also that pull that I had to join that I think other men share. And yeah, I mean, a lot of us are addicted to something. A lot of us are addicted to something. And at some level, we know that we're medicating some kind of pain underneath that. Addiction is really, it's just a disconnection from your deepest self. And when you're disconnected from yourself, you're in a lot of pain and you just want to feel better. And all animals do this. Like, it's not even just humans that use things to feel better. All mammals have that reward pathway that does that. And so I'm just normalizing it a bit here, that like, if you're in deep pain, you're going to find ways to medicate that pain. And the shortest path is often what most people will choose. And that doesn't get us very far. It doesn't provide a solution. And so a lot of us have to hit some kind of a bottom or a sticking point where we realize like, hey, I can't do this anymore and I need help. I've dug myself a hole here doing the same thing over and over to help, but I was really just sticking Band-Aids on top of Band-Aids. And then I had like a sort of festering wound under there that needs to be addressed. And I need help with that. And there's lots of structures that can help a person reconnect to themselves. And for me, rehab was a useful piece of that. And AA offers some of that reconnection for sure. And a men's group can also offer that. I mean, when you are able to have a confidential space where you can actually just bear your truth, like, here's all the bad shit I've done in my life. Here's all my insecurities, all the ways that I think badly of myself, the ways that I've crossed my own boundaries and been out of integrity in my life. And then have a circle of men not reject you, look you in the eye and say like, I see you, man. I've done that shit too. I still love you. I'm still here. I've got your back. That's a moment that it's like a micro healing moment, and if you stack those on top of each other, that's that healing process where the wound actually can close. So,
Wow.
Yeah,
I got you. Let's say someone is listening to this podcast and, maybe they're onto a path of a recovery, or maybe they've been addicted to something. They're kind of battling through this, and maybe hopefully this piques their curiosity to like, well, what is this thing, men's work? How would you maybe present it to them in a way that someone in their situation would understand?
So, I mean, with addiction, it's always like the first step is always to identify what addiction is and how a person heals from it, because everybody has their own idea about it, So the first thing I would share is about the disconnection from self, and that, like, listen, a lot of people have a lot of shame around their addictive patterns, their addictive things that they're into in their lives. And usually they've got a number of consequences that are mounting, maybe a partner left, or you got a DUI, or you lost your car, you lost your job, you sold all your shit so that you could afford this or that, or you've lost tons of opportunities. Like the list of lost potential is always even larger than the actual list of losses. And a person can drag the shame around with them, and the shame actually keeps them down, keeps them using. And, the first thing I like to do a little bit is like liberate a little bit of that and be like, listen, like, everybody struggles with something and everybody has wounding, and, you're an animal seeking shelter, and there, and I know that there is probably a better way for you to live. There's more for you in this life than just medicating your pain away until you die. Right. And so the pathway is, I really do love the 12 steps. Like step one is we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, lives have become unmanageable, but it's really about surrender. Like, okay, I can't do this alone. And then step two is I need help. And step three is, okay, I'm going to take action and commit to take the help and do the thing. And then steps 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 are clearing your past. They actually have a process where you write down all the dark stuff and the resentments and the harms that you've done in your life. You write it down, you tell somebody, and you just purge that all, purge it. And then you focus on like, okay, what are they call them defects of character, but like, what are the traits? What are my vices or my traits that are my main things that like hold me down? That might be dishonesty or inconsiderateness or selfishness, self-centeredness. And you commit and ask for those things to be removed from you because you're done with them. And then you make restitution for the harms that you've done. That whole process is really just, it's like a cleaning, a cleansing, and you're digging around to like reconnect to your deep self, and, this a step 5 is when you sit down and you basically, if it's done the way that I do it, you're almost telling your life story to a person and they're sitting there witnessing you, they're there with you all the way through. So there's this reconnection to your inner child that happens. So I'm tangenting, but what I would say is like, if you want to recover from addiction, you have to reconnect to your deepest self. You need to connect with other people and heal your wounds that you have with other people, with the father, with the mother, with the brother. And a group of men is the best context for you to do that in. A safe group of men is a place where you will slowly learn to reconnect to yourself, and partially by just connecting to other men and seeing their innocence and seeing them for who they are, hearing their secrets and telling them like, hey, I'm still here after you shared that with me, and I'm not judging you. And so if you're ready for that kind of healing, join a men's group, find a good men's group and join it, and don't leave. When you want to leave, don't, because 99% of the time, that instinct to leave is internal resistance. It's this is harder than running away, healing from addiction is not easy. Like, you need to stop using the thing that's giving you comfort. If it's alcohol and it gives you a warm feeling and you feel like cold and dark and scared without it, and you get, the jitters. If you want to quit alcohol, you got to quit alcohol. And yeah. you have to be in that uncomfortable space, and you certainly need other people to hold you in that space for a long time. I mean, there's a physical detox that happens from alcohol, but the emotional detox is where the healing happens, where it begins. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Maybe it's worth pointing out that you don't necessarily have to. People sometimes think, I think that, men's work or being in a men's circle is some sort of a therapy. There shouldn't be anything wrong per se, in, air quotes, to actually join a men's circle, right? You can get a lot of healing, a lot of growth in there. You could use that as a vehicle for personal growth, for spiritual growth. So, you don't have to be necessarily recovering from something or to see it as therapy to actually join.
Otherwise the people's stay would be quite short, right? It's like in my men's circle, it's a month-to-month payment, but guys are here for years, and it's all men come in different states of brokenness because we're all broken somehow, like feeling broken, right? But life does that to you anyways. Like, guys, all of these guys go through their ups and downs in their life, and they just stay with the group, and we're stronger together. That's what you realize is like, I'm stronger with these guys behind me. And so like, once you have that experience, you're like, why would I live life without having a band of brothers at my back,
Mm-hmm.
through, dating, through my marriage, through having kids, through becoming a grandparent and career ups and downs. Like, why wouldn't I have a band of brothers at my back,
Mm.
and it isn't therapy, but it's therapeutic, right? I guess that's
Yeah.
what I've been saying through all of this is like, yeah, it certainly isn't therapy, but the experience you have in a good men's group is therapeutic, 100%.
Yeah, I agree with this hands down. Um, that's most of the time where we have men coming in, and there was this gentleman who was nearly 60, an army vet, and within 45 minutes he was crying, and he said, I've never said some of these things to anybody in my family. I thought I'll take this to the grave, and here I am, kind of spilling my soul to some bunch of random strangers. Maybe it's easier this way because you don't really have that kind of emotional attachment, but this man kept coming back. So I'm like, okay, there is something definitely here.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. Did he stay? Because that's the
Yeah,
real
yeah.
key. Because you can get an emotional hangover. If people haven't heard this term, like,
Mm-hmm.
you can come in, it feels like a really safe space, and so unconsciously you just sort of like, here's all my stuff that I've like been holding in for years. I have to unburden myself, and then you do, and then you're like,
Mm-hmm.
I can't go back there. I told him everything.
Wow. And I never really thought
Right?
about it that way. Yeah, I didn't even know that there was a term.
This
Wow.
happens to people. Yeah. So you have to, like, it's important to warn people that might happen when they have a big share, and just remind them, like, hey, if you have any desire to pull back and not show up after this, just call one of us, and
Mm-hmm.
talk about it, because you did the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
It
Mm-hmm.
just doesn't, it's not your instinct. Your instinct has
Yeah,
been to
yeah,
hold and
yeah.
withhold and never share,
Mm.
So yeah.
Good. Oh, that's a good point. I'll make sure to include it to any future men's circles. So okay,
Yeah.
I took this one for free.
Yeah.
um, do you think that there is resistance for men to be, obviously me and you were in this kind of space, and as much as I want to believe that the space is growing, which I believe it is, on a macro scale, I think we obviously we have a lot of work to do. So I'm wondering, do you think that there is resistance for men to be joining men's circles because they think that there's going to be that judgment, there's that shame, etc., etc., the fact that they have to really expose themselves and put back the armor for a little bit and like, oh, really show who I am?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's different for every man, but I think a lot of guys run into, guys have resistance to putting time in to their emotional health, their emotional lives, right? We will pay good money and put in good time to go to something that's going to make us a lot of money, right? Business seminar. How many bullshit, like, multi-level marketing meetings have I been to where they're like selling some shitty product, but it's all about the team you build, and there's so much of that. And I'm thinking about how much time I wasted going to like intro meetings of some kind in my 20s.
Wow.
Guys will totally do that, right? We're pretty focused on the external world, the physical world. We like to work with objects sometimes, like build things, and we want to build business, and we want to make money. And that becomes a big priority. We want to build our physical bodies. We might get obsessed with that. Some guys like to do all of those things, but one of the last things in line is our emotional lives. And I don't know if it's made worse by the fact that our women are often insinuating and asking us to work on our emotional lives. And so we have some resistance to that even more. But it seems to take a back seat, and guys don't want to pay money and put in the time to work on something that's not broken. Right. So the standard is like, oh, unless something's really bad, I'm not going to work on it. Whereas with money, a lot of times, like, we just can't get enough. We're just going to chase it forever, and work till we drop dead. So I don't know what it is about men and our culture, but also something in our nature that makes us drive towards that, towards the more the physical world a little bit more, and the world of money and power. But it seems to be a part of our nature. And I mean, the feminine is a more relational, emotional being that is more concerned with relationships. And so there's also that piece around like men feeling like it's a feminine thing to even enter an emotional space. It's like they represent the emotion in the world and I don't have any, right? Men disassociate, compartmentalize, and disconnect from their own emotions, their own anger, but consequently, a lot of times their own passion and, that their vitality, they disconnect from that when they disconnect emotion out of their lives. They turn into robots. So I think all of those things contributing is what does it. There is resistance to men sitting in a circle doing men's work. And a lot of times when guys come to me for coaching, or they come to join my program, or they join the Samurai Brotherhood, there's something going on that's like, it's a big thing for them. And they've had a realization, they've had a moment of clarity, and they're like, I can't delay this any longer. I can't put this aside any longer. And so I must do this work. And, if I can change anyone's mind right now, it's like just join a men's group now, so that when things do get bad in your life, you just have those guys there, and they may even be able to help you prevent some really low bottoms, because it's like having a circle of elder in your life, right? Like, hey guys, what do you think? Should I like take this job? Or like, I'm thinking maybe I'm not worth it, maybe I'm not good enough yet. And then the guys are like, you're worth it, man. Go for it. You go to that thing, like I've seen so many guys go and get jobs and get really good opportunities in their life because of the men's group that they're sitting in. So it's funny how it comes full circle, right? Like, you're going to end up making more money and having more success in your life by having a personal growth oriented men's group behind you. And the extra thing that makes it happen is that the guys don't make it about the money. They're like, hey, what is it about your self-worth that holds you back? Like, you think you're not worth this much. Here's how I see you. You're this kind of man to me. And you're like, oh, wow, that feels really good. That's actually quite helpful. I'm going to be able to walk into this interview and feel powerful now. There's that sort of healing that happens with a peer group, and with other men and the father, that all of a sudden you become like a more integrated person, and you didn't even know that like you could maybe get to that level, And I often do say to people that, we talk about our fathers from time to time in men's group. I'm sure you do. And we do in my group. And sometimes if people ask, like, what are you doing in men's work? Sometimes the simple answer is we're giving each other what we always needed from our fathers. And maybe it's not what we didn't get from our fathers, because a lot of us had great fathers that gave us a lot, but inevitably, we didn't get everything we needed from our fathers. And there's sort of an endless need for brotherhood, approval, being seen and loved as we are. And also like really healthy challenge. Like, the fathers bring like a challenging energy, and sometimes it can be interpreted as like criticism of who we are, and like, you're not good enough. But really that's just one of the languages that men use. It's a piece of the language, challenge, that's how we make each other better. It's like we're steel sharpening steel or something. And as a boy, when challenge comes your way, it can be interpreted as, in a number of ways, but basically like we're giving each other that in a really heart-centered, open way, in a men's group. And that in itself is also another like healing aspect, because we really do want to rise to the challenge then, when we're like seen for who we are. We know that it's love, but it's kind of fiery.
Mm.
And we're like, okay, I have to rise up right now through this. So there's another tangent, but
No, dude. There's so many things. I'm like need to take like mental notes to. I think I'm gonna have to re-listen to the interview for sure to take some personal golden nuggets for me. You've mentioned a couple of times throughout the interview so far the father, and some people were some men, some people in general, both men and women, were fortunate enough to have a father in their lives. Maybe they were present, maybe they weren't present, but also some people, especially men, when there isn't a father figure around, that could lead them to a very dark path. Um, maybe
yeah.
could you address a little bit the role of the father in this whole thing, and maybe just not just a figurative father, but maybe the cultural father, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
because that seems to be a very the father plays a very pivotal role in our lives, I think.
Yeah. It's interesting culturally. I'm like, there's looking for like really good, mature, masculine father figures, and there's not many. There's not many of these figures who are worthy of being called like an integrated man. We have a lot of, it's like we're lacking elders in the West. And I think that's the case for a number of reasons. At least in North America, the way that people immigrated over here, we lost our elders. They got left back home. And so there's this this piece that we had 500, 600, 700 years ago, where there was elders in a village, and you could draw on their wisdom, and they were very sort of mature, that we haven't had for generations, and we're trying to rebuild that right now. And so on a personal level, a boy's relationship with his father is really important. Your father is the first man who's in your inner circle, who models how to be a man through every way that he moves around, how he organizes himself in the house, how he interacts with the mother or the romantic partner that's around, how he interacts with you, how he teaches you things, how he enforces the rules and order in the house. Like, here's what the rules are, and here's what happens when you cross the line. And that greatly influences how we see masculinity. And because the masculine is very involved with the power structures of the world, it's sort of like, it's very much how we see government and structures, even the school system, like all the systems in the world. We project our experience with our father onto those systems. And so inevitably, like, this is a little bit of a sidebar, but it's very interesting that most people who are really into conspiracy theories have massive wounding with the father, or they didn't have a father at all. If you disregard don't address the conspiracy theory thing with them, and just start asking them about their family life, and ask them about their experience with their father, usually there's either like no father, or there's like a huge betrayal there, or like, I totally didn't trust my father, and I think he's a bumbling idiot, or something like that. And so it makes sense that, like, oh, the way you describe your dad is the way that you see government and all the people controlling the world. So how you experience, we experience our parents as gods in the beginning, right? Your dad is a god, and then at some point you realize he's a person, and you start to sort of realize you're a person, he's a person, you're separate from him. And then in 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, you realize, like, oh, I'm a boy and I'm going to become a man, and I don't know how to do that. How do I do that? And that's scary. But you realize, like, you're not a woman. I mean, most men, this is the case. This is the case for most men. Like, okay, I'm not like mom, and I am like dad. And And then in your teen years, you try to differentiate from your father. And your father's dominant traits, you tend to either model them and like be like him to get his approval, or oppose him in those ways, as a way of saying fuck you to him, and hey, I'm different than you and I'm better than you. And a lot of us, in a sense, we kind of want to conquer our fathers. And at the same time, we want their approval infinitely, right? And so that inevitably usually doesn't go very well. The father's like, what the fuck's your problem, teenager? Calm down. And a lot of our dads have no idea how to interact with the teenager in a way where they're still leading them. A lot of teenagers these days are just sort of untethered out in the world. And our parents are like, what do I do with this kid? This half kid, half adult. In my case with my brother, we were medicated and then we were sent to rehab, and my brother went to jail a number of times, so, and then we're not like we talked about before the call, there's no initiation into manhood. It's really just struggle your way into the working world. Maybe when you get your first car, or, first time you have sex, you privately feel like you're a man now, and you're like, am I a man now? Is that it?
Yeah. Wow.
That wasn't even that good. Like most people, their first time having sex are like, really? That's it?
That's it?
That's what everybody's excited about? Like, that was 30 seconds, or, like it didn't even really work. Or I don't remember it.
Yeah.
But, we sort of stumble into adulthood and, there's a thing like in your 20s, you're bumping around trying to figure out who you are. You're just trying things on. And you also have a lot of shit running your unconscious, like how you should be in the world and how you shouldn't be in the world, based on that model and oppose, I'm going to be like my dad, or I'm going to push against my dad. That sort of tends to like run your show for a while. Until you start to really see it in your life and want to dismantle it and want to really find like the true essence of who you are underneath all of those things, because both of those things are a prison. That trying to get your approval from your dad by being like him is a prison. Doing something and behaving a certain way because it's the opposite of how your dad was is a prison too. You're being controlled by your need to be strong or whatever it may be. And both of those things are a prison. That neither of those things are who you are. And you need to see both of those things clearly. You need to have other men see them in you and reflect that, and search for the essence between those two, or beneath them, to really find yourself. And that takes work, that takes time. And that's men's work, and that's why the father is so important, because the first thing that we do in Samurai Brotherhood, when a guy joins the group, for me, the first meeting, he gets to sit and just introduce himself and then participate. Second meeting, he's telling us all about his dad.
Wow.
Spends half an hour. Tell us your dad's story. Tell us like what your dad's name is. How old is he? What was his childhood like? And what was it like for you as a kid experiencing him? What did he teach you? What didn't he teach you? What are you still angry at him for? And how did your relationship evolve with him over the years? Because it's like opening a guy's head and looking down inside into how he sees men. Yeah. Yeah. So it's a big part of it, man.
Yeah. Wow. Oof. I'm getting a little bit of goosebumps listening to all of this. Just because I guess I can relate to all of those things. And like you said, those are two prisons where I've been trying to run away from my dad, and I think becoming such a nice guy, and falling into this nice guy trap.
Yeah.
And at the same time, now I'm seeing, wow, okay, that's a prison, but I don't want to also his approval or earn his approval. So I gotta be my own man, and that's a tricky balance, I think, to find, but it takes work like everything else.
Yeah. Was your dad a nice guy, or was he like more of like a strict, oppressive?
I think that
What was
I
that?
actually had a lot of conversations with them over the last 3 or 4 years because mostly he has been present in my life, but not present, if this makes sense. So
Mm-hmm.
I've seen my father through the lens of my mother, and they don't really
Right.
get along that well. Like the love isn't there, and I think his father wasn't around to really teach him, maturity and manhood and how to step into that. So I think he did the best he can with what he had, but oftentimes I'd see him yelling, and I think that's what I made the switch of, oh, I don't want to be like this. I don't want to be. He's a nice guy. Don't get me wrong, but perhaps too nice guy, a
Yep.
little bit too much. But I think when he was yelling and like being very, I won't say violent physically, but very violent verbally,
Mm-hmm.
that's what I decided. Okay, I don't want to be like that, and that's a trigger even till this day. That's something I'm working on. So,
Yep.
is this answering the question?
Yes. Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yeah. So I
Okay.
mean, there's stuff in there where like you oppose your father's anger. You're like never gonna be angry like that,
Mm,
and it's a trigger for you. But at the same time, you're modeling him almost unconsciously as a nice guy, right? And
mm-hmm,
so you can see how you're trapped. You're like, I'm like my dad, and I'm anti my dad, which is also a prison, and I'm
mm-hmm.
like, so you're like, I am my father. How do I
Yeah.
get out of this?
Oh,
And we
yes.
all face that, right? Like, and some of us are like, don't tell me I'm like my father. It's
Mm,
like, well, that's where you need to go, man,
mm, mm,
because like of any other man on the planet, you are more like him genetically. Like
mm-hmm,
if he
mm-hmm,
raised you, he had the most influence on you emotionally
mm,
and in terms of how to operate in the world. And
mm-hmm.
look at how your dad essentially raised you like his dad raised him, right?
I
Because
think there's a lot of patterns. Sorry to, I don't mean to be in the flow, but there's a
yeah,
lot of patterns that are being passed over generations. I think it's called epigenetics, where you kind of pass over
yep,
trauma or certain kind of behavior
yeah,
traits to generations.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. And our generation, I really feel like the millennials and the next generation, it makes sense that we're the ones who are really going to heal this stuff.
mm,
We're the ones who are going to go, it's probably not good to leave a baby in a crib crying for hours until it falls asleep due to exhaustion. Like
mm,
that's a traumatizing experience. But all of our parents were told that's how you're supposed to do it. You're supposed to treat the baby like an adult from the beginning. Tell them to
yeah,
grow up,
yeah, yeah.
when they're an infant. And it's because their parents were involved with war. They were in the war. There's a severely traumatized entire generation, like 2-3 generations back,
Mm,
right? The 2 and 3. And and it takes a few generations, I think, of safety to develop the like emotional intelligence and the environment where we can really get into the healing space. It's not safe to do the work that we're doing if there's like war happening in your country or just around the corner. If there's danger nearby. Nobody's going to make time for that, and we're all like shields up, right? So it kind of makes sense that our generation is the one to really start this work, and um, and that we're all sort of searching for teachers. Like, how do we do this? Like, I know something's wrong, but I don't know what to do. You know, um, but that for me, at least, the end point is between myself and my father is being able to stand in front of him or sit with him and be unreactive to how he is and just see him as a man. If I can be, there's a place in me that is secure enough, healed enough, grounded enough in my own being that no matter what my dad does, I can sit and just observe that and think clearly,
mm,
notice what's happening. And for me, especially, actually, my biggest trigger is my brother. My brother was more of a problem in my life growing up. He was like the tyrant in my life that was
mm,
constantly like, yeah, like making things scary or emotionally unsafe. And so that's where my biggest challenge has been. And you don't have to do all that work with your family. You don't have to do all this work with your father. You can do it with other men. And it's really just like, I mean, just a simple exercise with a group of guys, like, here, I don't trust men because, and having guys share, like, here's why I don't trust men. I don't trust and then maybe follow that up with, I don't trust myself because, and see if there's some crossover, some similarities.
For sure.
Connect that to your father. That's that healing process that sort of like can bring you back to, what I was talking about, that grounded sense of who you are, that unreactive space. And it takes time and energy. You can't read a book and then have it be done. You have to show up and do the work. Like if you want a house built, like you have to show up and bring the wood and put the nails in and do all the stuff. You have to do the work. Men need to realize, like, you need to put time in to this. You like, stop going to useless multi-level marketing seminars or like, balance some of your energy and where you put your time. You put some time into the physical, you put some time into food and nutrition, you put some time into making money and being good and prosperous in career. You need to put time into your emotional health, your emotional life, and your relationships and your connection with other men. Every man needs a band of brothers. Every man needs a band of brothers. It doesn't matter, like, where you're from, what your income level is, where you live, like your relationship status, or how many problems are happening in your life. Everyone needs a band of brothers. And if you don't have that, you need to find one, go out and create one, and just devote time to that in your life, because that is the thing that can actually heal a lot of the other crap that's happening in your life. Like the addictions, like we were talking about, addiction takes a lot of work, but the essence of healing addiction is that reconnection to self and to humanity. So men's work does that.
Touche to that. I was thinking about this generational trauma, and the fact that, yes, the previous generations were a lot more focused on survival, both physical and then economical recovery. But yeah, I think a few years ago, when I started getting a little bit more conscious about these things, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I realized, okay, the buck stops with me. Whatever has happened, I'm gonna take it on me to heal all these wounds and to go through whatever I need to go through to really put an end to this, so that my future, if I'm fortunate enough to have children and grandchildren, etc., they don't have to suffer what I have went through. This is not to say that they should be soft, but that there should be a balance, and me not imparting the old wounds to them, if this makes sense.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, there's in Tibetan Buddhism, they believe in reincarnation. And so your soul comes back to earth and chooses a body and an existence that is that will bring the lessons that your soul needs to learn. And maybe that's like deep suffering or deep loss or being killed in war. Like, I don't know how it all works, but there's this idea that, like, that you come back from multiple iterations in the game, and that you're here to learn. You're here to evolve. You're not here to just like show up and play over and over again and be a robot, because we're not robots. There is a piece of it, like, despite us being like very unconscious, the way that we operate, and very controlled by our unconscious minds, there's a piece of us that is conscious and that can shape who we are on purpose. You can shape your character. You can shape the lessons that you're learning in life. You can respond to the inputs that are coming into your world, and you can take responsibility for more than just, feeding yourself and putting clothes on your body. Like, there can be more to life than that. And for you, you're like, okay, I want to heal these wounds. I want to like change. I want to take that epigenetic responsibility and like impart something upon the next generation that's different. And I'm not going to get it all done. I might not get all the work done in one lifetime, but I'm going to do my part. Right. And and then hopefully my kids will do their part, and on we go forward. And
Yes.
so I find it's kind of cool just to like think about the Buddhist, the Tibetan Buddhist way of seeing it, that like it's a long journey. You might have multiple iterations here of things that you need to learn on this planet, but like you can choose what it is that you want to work on now, here in this life, and do a part of that, and have taking that accountability and responsibility in your life. Carrying a load it actually brings more meaning to life. Like it's actually a gift. Jordan Peterson talks about this really well. He's such a poetic dude sometimes, the way that he
He's
describes.
more of a cultural father. I see
Yeah.
him as he's a father to a generation of lost men, I think, and generation of men in
100%.
general. Yeah.
100% he is. And yeah, I'm very fond of Jordan Peterson that way, the way that he does represent like the father for a lot of guys, and this like sort of noble father who's standing for something good, and stands for values, and but yeah, I mean, he speaks to like how to like really carry a load, and like that, existentialism, like life is meaningless, like really, there's nothing you're going to do in this life that you're going to carry to the next one or beyond your death. Like you're going to lose everything. You're going to accumulate all this stuff, all these relationships, all these experiences, and then you're going to die and you're going to forget it all. And you're going to lose all that stuff's going to be left. And that can be, you can be going, well, what's the meaning of all of this then? Well, beyond this life there, you have to choose a meaning, and you have to choose a meaning in this life. And, what he shares is like, the more of a load that you take on, the more fulfillment somehow there is. It's work, but it feels fulfilling to contribute. It's just built into our system, built into our framework, and so you might as well choose that, make that choice and carry a load. Yeah.
Dude, my mind right now is racing at like 100 miles an hour. Like all the things you said, there's so many questions I want to ask. I really like what you said about epigenetic responsibility. That's probably the first time I've ever heard this, and I think I'll have to take it, but I'll give you credit for it.
Take it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Listen, I know that I think we can speak like this for another 3-4 hours without any preparation. I'm also mindful of time, so I want to be respectful of that. One last question. Is there something that you wanted me to ask you that I didn't?
No, man. I'm very satisfied with our conversation. I really like just poking around in each other's minds a little bit, and just having authentic interaction. And yeah, I appreciate the conversation. Can I tell people a little bit about
by all means,
my stuff?
Floor is yours.
So yeah, my website's evolvingman.com, and I do a small amount of coaching one-on-one, because guy personally has so much time. I run men's groups for the Samurai Brotherhood. When I joined, there was 2 groups. Now there's 50. And I started a Ronin division, which is the online division. We've got about 14 of those groups right now. Small groups of men meeting in the same week, same time, same place on Zoom, from all over the world. We've got guys in Europe, a lot of guys in North America, and a few groups in Australia. So that organization's always growing. And I think we've really sort of honed in on a really pure way of doing men's work. And so most of the groups are in person, and the goal is, like, even for the guys who are in the Ronin division, is to be in an in-person squad, is what we call them, a squad, eventually, because men needs to be like looking in each other's eyes and putting their hands on each other and hugging and, doing all that stuff that we've been avoiding for the last year and a half here. So there's that. There's samuraibrotherhood.com. That's the website. And I've just created a men's course, like an introduction to men's work. It's on my website. It's called The Integrated Man. It's 29 videos with me talking about men's work, talking about the father, talking about the mother, which we didn't really touch on today, the 4 major masculine archetypes, nice guys, macho jerks, relationships, all the things that I know. So it's like doing a solid like 6 coaching sessions with me for less than the cost of 1 coaching session. So that's the integrated man, and that's about it. I'm on Instagram at Evolving Man.
Okay. I'm sure that a lot of people are gonna take a lot of value from our conversation. Hopefully, please, if Ben's message and his energy resonates, definitely go check Evolving Man, Samurai Brotherhood. This is actually how I was exposed to Ben's work and Samurai Brotherhood, so I definitely recommend them. Go check it out, and thank you very much. I see you in the next episode.
Thanks, brother. Great to meet you, man.
Likewise, sir. Thank you.